There was once a little girl called Goldilocks, and she was called Goldilocks because she had beautiful golden hair. And she'd promised her mother that she would never go out by herself. But one day when the sun was shining there by the side of the forest, she woke herself up. She got herself dressed, she went down the stairs, and when she looked outside at the trees, there she could hear the birds, and she decided to take 1, 2, 3 steps. But when she got a little bit further into the forest, she saw a squirrel with a great big bushy tail, and she decided that she would take 1, 2, 3 steps. Then she saw some flowers. They were yellow in the middle with white on the outside. Then she saw some other flowers that were white on the inside and yellow on the outside. And she took 1, 2, 3 steps. But then she was starting to feel hungry, and she decided that she would turn round and go back home. But when she turned around and looked, she didn't see the birds. She didn't see the squirrel. She couldn't see the flowers. She saw mushrooms and ferns and animal tracks, and now she was a little bit frightened because she was lost. And she went, I wish I'd never come in. But when she sniffed the air, she could smell something really good. It was porridge, and she really liked porridge. And as she looked, she could see that there was a house, and on the windowsill of the house there were 1, 2, 3 bowls of porridge. There was a great big bowl, there was a middle-sized bowl, and there was a small bowl. And she went straight up to the windowsill with the 3 bowls of porridge and picked up the big spoon by the large bowl, and it was hot and salty, and she didn't like that. Then she picked up the middle-sized spoon by the middle-sized bowl, and she tasted the porridge, and it was too cold and sugary, and she didn't like that. Then she picked up the small bowl, and she put the spoon inside, and it wasn't too hot, it wasn't too cold, it wasn't too salty, it wasn't too sugary, it was just right, and she ate it all up. When she looked in through the window, there she could see 1, 2, 3 chairs. There was a tall chair, a middle-sized chair, and a small chair. And she went inside of the house, and she sat down on the tall chair, but it was hard and lumpy, and she couldn't get comfortable no matter what she did. Then she sat down on the middle-sized chair, and it was soft and feathery. And then she sat down on the small chair, and she did what she shouldn't have done. She rocked this way and that, and forwards and backwards, and it split and it broke with a great big crash. She picked herself up, went up the stairs, and at the top of the stairs there she could see 1, 2, 3 beds. There was a long bed, a middle-sized bed, and a small bed. When she lay down on the long bed, it was hard and it was lumpy and she couldn't get comfortable. Then she sat down on the middle-sized bed, and it was soft and feathery. But when she sat down on the small bed, it was just like her bed at home, and she fell fast asleep. But when she was asleep, the owners of the house came back. There were 1, 2, 3 bears. There was a great big daddy bear. There was a middle-sized mummy bear, and there was a very small baby bear. They looked at the 1, 2, 3 bowls of porridge, and the father bear said in his deep, gruff voice, "Who's been eating my porridge?" And the mother bear looked and said, "And who's been eating my porridge?" But little baby bear, he started to cry and went, "Who's been eating my porridge? And they've eaten it all up." The 3 bears went in through the door, and they looked at the 1, 2, 3 chairs, and the father bear looked and he said, "Who's been sitting in my chair?" in his deep, gruff voice. And Mother Bear said, "And who's been sitting in my chair?" In a kind, polite voice. But little baby bear, he looked and went, "Who's been sitting in my chair?" And they broke it into little pieces. The three bears went up the stairs, and when they looked inside of the bedroom there, they could see the 1, 2, 3 beds. Father Bear said, "Who's been sleeping in my bed?" Mother Bear said, "And who's been sleeping in my bed?" But little baby bear, he looked at Goldilocks inside of his bed and he went, "Oh, who's been sleeping in my bed and is still there?" Goldilocks jumped up and ran as fast as she could down the stairs and out through the door and through the trees, and she saw the squirrel and she heard the birds and smelled the flowers, and there outside of her own house she saw her mother. Her mother said, "Goldilocks, Goldilocks, Goldilocks, where have you been?" She told her about the 1, 2, 3 bowls of porridge, the 1, 2, 3 chairs, the 1, 2, 3 beds, and the 1, 2, 3 bears. "Oh, Goldilocks, promise me that you won't go out by yourself." And Goldilocks promised that she never would, and sat down and had the biggest bowl of porridge that you ever did see. And she lived happily ever after. There were 2 great hills, and on each of the hills the grass would grow. And between the hills there was a river, and over the river there was a bridge. Now on one side of the bridge there lived 1, 2, 3 Billy Goats Gruff. There was baby Billy Goat Gruff, who had small horns on the top of his head, no bigger than your thumbs. There was middle-sized Billy Goat Gruff, who had horns the size of your hands, and there was great big Billy Goat Gruff, who had horns on the top of his head as long as your arm. But underneath the bridge there lived a great and a terrible troll. The troll did not like anybody trip-trap-trapping on his bridge, which meant that baby Billy Goat Gruff, middle-sized Billy Goat Gruff, and big Billy Goat Gruff had to stay on their side of the river. Now, they would eat the grass, which meant that as they ate it, there wasn't much left, and they would look and they would think to themselves, "Wish we could go across that great big bridge and get to the tall, green, sweet grass on the other side." But they were very scared. Eldest baby Billy Goat Gruff and middle-sized Billy Goat Gruff were very scared of the troll. But baby Billy Goat Gruff was chewing at some small pieces of hard, dry, green grass and thought to itself, "I wish I could go across that bridge. I'm only small, and if I go across the bridge I wouldn't make a good meal for a troll. I wouldn't really." And so baby Billy Goat Gruff picked itself up and started to trip-trap, 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 trip-trap across the bridge, and it had nearly got to the other side. But just when it thought that it was safe, up jumped the great and the terrible troll. "Who's that trip-trap-a-trapping on me bridge?" Baby Billy Goat Gruff with the horns on its head no bigger than your thumb. "Well, that's only me. Baby Billy Goat Gruff, please don't eat me. I'm very, very small. I wouldn't make a very good meal for you." The troll looked and said, "Well, why shouldn't I eat you?" And baby Billy Goat Gruff thought to itself, I've got a brother. I've got a brother who's called middle-sized Billy Goat Gruff, and he's got bigger horns, a bigger body. He'd make a breakfast and a dinner for you to eat. Please let me go." The troll thought to himself, "Middle-sized Billy Goat Gruff, you say? Well, he sounds very good to me. Get off me bridge." And baby Billy Goat Gruff trip-trap, 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 tripped across and started to eat the tall, sweet, green grass. Middle-sized Billy Goat Gruff was trying to find some good grass to eat. It was looking around. It looked and went, "Baby Billy Goat Gruff, I wish that we could go and get some proper grass to eat. Baby Billy Goat Gruff." and it looked over to the other side of the bridge, and who could it see but baby Billy Goat Gruff eating the tall, sweet green grass. If he can go across, then I can go across. The troll must be sleeping. And so middle-sized Billy Goat Gruff went onto the bridge and a trip-trap, 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 tripped. And when it thought that it was safe and nearly at the other side, up jumped the great and the terrible troll. "Oh, who's that trip-a-trap-a-trapping on me bridge?" "It's only me, middle-sized Billy Goat Gruff. Please don't eat me." "Middle-sized Billy Goat Gruff, I've heard about you. You'll make me a breakfast and a dinner. Oh, please don't eat me. Please don't eat me." "Why shouldn't I be eating you?" I've got a bigger brother. He's got horns on his head as long as your arm, and he would make you a breakfast, a dinner, a supper, and a tea for 2 days. Please let me go." "Oh, you like the sound of this? Get off me bridge." And middle-sized Billy Goat Gruff, he trip-trap, 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 trip-trapped across the bridge and got to the other side. And baby Billy Goat Gruff and middle-sized Billy Goat Gruff were there eating the tall, sweet, green grass. Now, there was just big Billy Goat Gruff. He was there with his horns on his head, and he was trying to eat some of the hard, dry, brown grass. And he said, "Baby Billy Goat Gruff, middle-sized Billy Goat Gruff, I wish that I could be on the other side of the..." And he looked all around. And he looked over here. And he looked over there. He looked up and he looked down. And he could see them on the other side of the river. "If they can go across, then I can go across." And he trip-trap, trip-trap, trip-trapped on the bridge. And when he was about 3/4 of the way across the bridge, up jumped the troll. "Who's that a-trap-a-trap-a-trapping on me bridge?" "It's me, big Billy Goat Gruff. I've heard all about you. You'll make me a breakfast, a dinner, a supper, a tea for 2 days. Now I'm going to eat you." "I don't think you will." And big Billy Goat Gruff bent his head down with his horns in front of him, and he ran as fast as he could towards the troll, and he hit the troll, and the troll went up in the air. Ooh, and down he came. And he landed in the water with a huge splash and was washed away. And from that time, baby Billy Goat Gruff could trip-trap, 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 trip. And middle-sized Billy Goat Gruff could trip-trap, 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 trip. And big Billy Goat Gruff could trip-trap, trip-trap, trip across the bridge and eat the tall, sweet green grass on both sides of the river. Little Red Riding Hood's grandmama had made her a beautiful red riding hood, and she would wear it on top of her head and over her shoulders, and no one called her by a real name anymore. She was always known as Little Red Riding Hood. But when she found out that her grandmama was ill, her mother said to her, "Little Red Riding Hood, you must go to the other side of the forest, walk straight along the path, and take some things for your grandmama." Well, grandmama would like to have some bread, some butter, some honey, and some milk and some cakes. So if you take them in a basket, that will make her feel much better. Little Red Riding Hood was very excited. She had the basket, she had a Red Riding Hood upon her head, and she had promised her mother that she would walk straight along the path. But who was there in amongst the trees but the big, bad wolf? When he saw her skipping along carrying the basket, he stepped out in front of her and said, "Well, my dear, and where are you going on this fine and sunny day?" trusting Little Red Riding Hood looked at him and said, "I'm going to go to my grandmama's. She's not very well. I'm taking her a basket with some things inside. And what do you have for your grandmama?" "Oh, I've got bread and butter and honey and milk and some cake." "Oh, my dear, do you not have any flowers for your grandmama?" "No," said Little Red Riding Hood. "Do you think that I should take some?" "Oh, of course. If someone's not feeling very well, then you must take them some flowers. And there are some flowers just down there by the side of the river." Little Red Riding Hood had promised her mother that she would go straight along the path. But this great big bad wolf seemed to tell her that she needed to take some flowers. But "Now, just tell me where your grandmama lives," said the big bad wolf. "She lives on the other side of the forest in the cottage and—" "Well, you go along. It'll be fine." Little Red Riding Hood went off the path and went down to pick up some flowers for her grandmama. But the big bad wolf ran on to the grandmama's house, and he went to the door and he knocked upon the door. And the grandmama, who was in bed with a nightcap on her head and some glasses upon her nose and a nightie on her back, said, "Who's there?" The big bad wolf went, "It's only me, only me, grandmama, Little Red Riding Hood." The grandmama thought that Little Red Riding Hood's voice sounded very strange, but she called her upstairs. "Come upstairs, I'm in bed." The wolf could not believe his luck. He opened up the door, went inside, crept up the stairs and went to the bedroom. And there was Little Red Riding Hood's grandmama in bed. And quicker than a single heartbeat, the big bad wolf jumped upon her and took her and stuffed her inside of a cupboard and put her nightcap upon his head, put the glasses upon his nose and the nightie upon his back, and pulled the covers right up to his nose and closed the curtains and waited for Little Red Riding Hood to come. Little Red Riding Hood had the flowers, the milk, the butter, the honey, the bread, the cake, and she got to her grandmama's little cottage and she knocked upon the door, and the big bad wolf inside of the bed, dressed up like the grandmama, went, "Who's there? Who's there?" "It's me, grandmama, it's me." Well, come in, my dear." Little Red Riding Hood thought that her grandmama's voice was very strange and she must have been very ill indeed. But she went inside with the basket by her side. Up the stairs she went, opened up the door, and it was very dark in the bedroom. And in the distance she looked and she could see someone or something, and she didn't know what or who it could be. But as she looked, she said, "Grandmama, what big hands you've got! All the better to hold you with," said the big bad wolf. "Grandmama, what big eyes you've got! All the better to see you with, my dear." "Grandmama, what big ears you've got! All the better to hear you with, my dear." But when Little Red Riding Hood looked at her mouth, at least she thought it was her grandma's mouth, she said, "Grandmama, what big teeth you've got! All the better to eat you with." And here the big bad wolf swallowed Little Red Riding Hood whole and lay in the bed and was very full indeed and fell fast asleep. Now the woodcutter was passing by that way, and he'd never heard the grandmama snore like this. And he went inside with his axe over his shoulder, and he could see what had happened. He took the grandmama out of the cupboard, and he got Little Red Riding Hood from out of the big bad wolf's stomach, and filled the stomach with 1, 2, 3 huge stones, and stitched him back up again. And they all waited outside. Now the big bad wolf was very thirsty. "I need to have a drink from the river." And when he went outside, he took a drink, but the stones inside of him made him so heavy that he fell in the water with a great big splash underneath the water of the river, and was never seen again. And the grandmama, and Little Red Riding Hood, and the woodcutter, and everyone who lived in that place lived happily ever after. There was a boy called Jack, and he was called Lazy Jack or Idle Jack because he didn't like to do any work. And he lived in a house with his mother, and all they had in all of this world was a cow that was called Milky White, and it would give them thick, rich, creamy milk. And his mother would shout up, "Jack, you've got to go and do some work now." But Jack would just turn over in his bed, and up she'd shout again, "Jack, you've got to go and do some work now." But when she looked at him, and she could show him that look that only mothers can, he knew he would have to get out of work. But one day when she shouted up, she said, "Jack, Milky White won't give us no milk. You've got to take her all the way to market." When Jack heard this, he was very, very sad. That would mean a lot of work, having to walk all of the way along the road to go to the market to sell Milky White the cow. But the way that his mother looked at him, and the way that mothers can, he knew that he had to do it. He took hold of the rope around its neck and started to walk with the saddest face you ever did see along the road. And when he got to a corner of the road, well, who did he meet but an old man dressed all in green, with a green hat on his head, green shirt on his back, green trousers on his legs, and green shoes. He looked and he said, "That looks like a very good cow that you've got there. I've got something inside of this bag that will keep you rich till the end of your days." Oh, Jack thought. Gold, silver, diamonds, anything. Oh, it would be good not to have to walk all of the way to market. And without even thinking, he handed over the rope that held the cow and grabbed hold of the bag. He could feel something small inside. He thought, "Oh, it's definitely going to be gold and silver and diamonds." But when he opened up and looked inside, well, all he could see were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 beans. Beans! What was he going to do? How was he going to tell his mother? He looked this way and that to try and find the old man dressed all in green, but he'd gone. And so had the cow. And all he had to show was a bag of beans. His mother was waiting by the door. "Well, Jack, what you got for Milky White? Oh, a cow, eh? What you got?" Jack took the bag, shook and shivered and quaked and quivered as he handed it over. She could feel that there was something. "Is it gold?" Jack shook his head. "Must be silver." He shook his head. "Diamonds, that's what you've got." But when she looked inside and saw that all that was inside were beans, she yelled, "Beans, you stupid boy!" And she sent him straight to bed without any supper. She took those 5 magic beans, for that's what they were. She took them and threw them out of the window, and that night the rain came down, and in the morning the sun shone, and the beanstalk, the beans grew taller and right up to the clouds and looked almost like a ladder up to the sky. And when Jack woke up, his bedroom was bathed in a green light, for the sun was shining through one of the leaves that was as big as a counterpane. And he didn't wait. He just started to climb up the beanstalk. His mother shouted, "Jack, you be careful!" But he climbed and he climbed and he climbed and he climbed, and when he got past the clouds, he saw that there was a road, and he walked and he walked and he walked till he came to where there was a castle, and he knocked upon the door of the castle, and the castle door creaked open. There stood a giant of a woman. She looked all round. "Who's there? Who's there?" Jack was so small to her that he looked up to her and went, "Please let me in." The old woman looked down. "Oh, if my husband finds you inside of here, he'll have you for his breakfast. You'd better go." "Oh, please let me in." The giant woman was kind. She let him come in, she sat him down, but just as he'd sat down, he heard thump, 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 thump. The giant's wife said, "Quick, go and hide in the oven." And Jack ran and hid inside of the oven and could just peep through by the side of the door. And just in time as the door opened up, there stood the giant with dark, green, greasy hair, a long, filthy beard, and he sniffed the air and went, "3, 5, 4, thumb. I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread." "Oh, don't be so silly," said the giant's wife. "Go and sit down and I'll bring you your supper." Without a word of please or thank you, he took that supper and he didn't use a knife or a fork. He just stuffed it inside of his mouth. And the food dribbled down inside of his beard, and then he looked at his wife and said, Wife, bring me my coins." Jack was very interested when he heard coins. She brought a bag as big as this room and put it down on the table, and the giant started to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He fell asleep, resting his head on top of the coins, and the bag was still there. Jack was frightened, but he crept out of the oven, ran over, grabbed hold of the bag, put it on his back, and he ran right out of the castle, and he climbed and he climbed and he climbed and he climbed, and when he got to the bottom of the beanstalk, his mother looked at him and said, "Well, what you got in there then?" He handed the bag to his mother. She looked inside. This time she didn't scream bean. She went, "Gold, you clever boy! You brought us all gold!" And Jack and his mother could have lived very well with the gold. But Jack was a curious boy. And he climbed and he climbed and he climbed and he climbed right up to the top of the beanstalk again. And he walked along the road till he came to the castle, and he knocked upon the door and it creaked open. And there stood the giant's wife. "Who's there? Who's there?" Jack once again took a big deep breath and went, "Please let me in." And she looked down and says, "Oh, the last time I let a little boy inside of here," for she didn't recognize him, "last time I let a little boy inside of here, he stole our coins and my husband was ever so angry. Oh, please let me in." She was a kindly soul. She let him come in. She sat him down, and just as he was about to eat, they heard thump, 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 thump. She said, "Quick, go and hide." And Jack hid without her pointing where the oven was, and he peeped out of the door just in time for the door creaked open, and there stood the giant with his greasy green hair and his long, thick, dirty beard, and he sniffed the air and 3, 5, 4, 5. I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread. "Oh, don't be so silly," said the giant's wife. "It's just the smell of your last meal." She brought him his supper, and he didn't use a knife and he didn't use a fork. He just poured it into his mouth. He said, "Wife, bring me my hen." A hen? Thought Jack. I wonder what this is going to be. She brought out a hen, and it didn't look any different to any other hen. But when the giant looked at it and went, "Hen, lay me an egg," it went, And it laid a beautiful, round, shining, golden egg. And Jack smiled. Oh, what I couldn't do with a hen like that. The giant said again, Hen, lay me an egg. And he fell fast asleep as the hen laid another beautiful golden egg. Jack crept out, grabbed hold of the hen by its feet and its beak so it couldn't make a noise, slung it over his back, and he ran and he ran and he ran as fast as he could, and he climbed and he climbed and he climbed and he climbed. And when he got down to the bottom of the beanstalk, his mother was there and said, Jack, what you got there? Just looks like an old hen, that does. Watch this, mother. Hen, lay me an egg. And sure enough, the hen went, and it laid a beautiful, round, shining, golden egg. Oh, you're a clever boy, you are. And Jack could have lived very well with the coins and the golden eggs, but he was very curious. And he climbed and he climbed and he climbed and he climbed. And he walked and he walked and he walked till he came to the castle. But this time he put on a disguise, a hat and a cloak and a scarf about his neck. And when he knocked upon the door of the castle, it creaked open yet again. There stood the giant's wife. She saw him there. Oh, please let me come in. For he changed his voice. Oh, please let me come in. I'm not going to let you in. Every time I let little boys inside of this place, they steal things. Please let me come in. And she did let him come in, and he didn't get a chance to even sit down. For soon as he was there by the side of the table there, thump, thump, thump upon the floor, and Jack, without being told or shown, went and hid in the oven, and the giant's wife thought that this was very strange. But just in time the door creaked open, and there was the giant with his dirty green greasy hair and his filthy beard. He sniffed the air and went, Revival. I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread. Oh, don't be so daft, said the giant's wife. Go and sit down. Well, this time, when the giant was brought his food, he didn't use his hands or his fingers. He just picked up the plate. And it all dripped down on his clothes, and he yelled at his wife, Wife, bring me my harp. A harp? Thought Jack. I wonder what this is. The harp was brought. It had a beautiful golden face that was lined all with diamonds, fine clothes that were made out of silver, and there it was, and the giant, with his terrible voice, said, Harp, harp, sing for me. It started to play, and the beautiful song that it sang was so sweet upon the ear, and the giant fell fast asleep. The harp was still singing. Jack crept out of the oven, grabbed hold of the harp, and as soon as he did, the harp started to scream, Master! Master! Jack is stealing me! The giant woke up, and he was not pleased. He grabbed a great sword and threw another to Jack, and they fought in that place with Jack with the harp on his back. And the giant knocked the sword right out of Jack's hand. It went up in the air and stuck in the wall, but Jack had the harp on its back. And still it screamed, Master! Master! Jack is stealing me! And he ran, and the giant was behind him. Thump, thump, thump on the ground. And he ran till he came to the beanstalk, and he climbed, and now he could feel the hot breath of the giant behind him. And Jack yelled to his mother, Mother, bring me an axe. And the giant was getting closer, and still he could feel his breath up on the back of his neck, and the harp was screaming, Master, Master. Jack's mother brought him an axe, and he took the axe, and he chopped, and he chopped, and he chopped through the beanstalk. The beanstalk came down with the giant as well, and landed on the ground with a great big crash. And that was the end of the giant. And from that time, people would travel to see the hen that could lay golden eggs, and listen to the harp that could sing for itself. And Jack and his mother, they lived happily ever after. There was once a house with 1, 2, 3 little pigs inside and their mother. Now the 3 little pigs weren't really quite so small, and the mother said to them one day, "You 3 pigs are getting too big. You're going to have to go out and make some houses for yourselves." Now the first pig was sad. The second pig was sadder. But the third pig was a very clever pig and knew that the mother was right. Now the next morning, when the sun started to shine, out they went along the road, and as they walked it was hot, 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 hot. And they met with a man with a great big bundle of straw upon his back, and the first pig said, "Man, give me a straw," and never a word of please, and never a word of thank you. But the man was hot, 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 and he took the straw from off his back and gave it to the first little pig. And the first pig put the straw inside of the ground, and straw inside of straw, and soon there was a wall and a window and a door and a roof. And the first pig looked and went, "My house is very strong." But the third little pig was a clever little pig, said, "No, no, 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 no. The big bad wolf who lives at the top of the hill will come down, and he'll huff and he'll puff and he'll blow your house down." "I don't think he can," said the first little pig. And now there were 1, 2 little pigs. And along they walked along the road, and who did they meet but a man? And this time the man had a great big bundle of sticks upon his back. And the second pig looked and said, "Please, man, can I have your sticks?" But never a word of thank you. But the man was hot, 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 hot. He took the sticks from off his back and gave them to the second pig. And the second pig put the sticks inside of the ground, and sticks inside of sticks, and soon there was a wall and a window and a door and a roof. And the second pig looked and said, "My house is very strong." But the third pig, who was a very clever pig, said, "No, up at the top of the hill there lives the big bad wolf, and he'll come and he'll huff and he'll puff and he'll blow your house down." "I don't think he can," said the second little pig. But now there was only 1 pig left, walking along the road, and who did they meet but a man with a great big barrow load of bricks. The third pig was very polite and said, "Please, could I have some of your bricks? Thank you very much." The old man gave the pig the bricks and some cement, and brick was placed beside brick, and soon there was a window and a wall and a door and a roof, and the house was very strong. But up at the top of the hill there lived the big bad wolf, and he licked at his lips and he rubbed at his tongue and went, "Yum, yum, yum, piggy wiggy for my tum. I like to eat pigs for breakfast and dinner and tea." And he went to the house that was made out of straw, and he rat-a-tat-tatted on the door. Little pig, let me come in." But the first pig said, "No, no, no, I won't let you in, not by the hairs on my chinny chin chin. In that case I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down." And he took a big deep breath, and he huffed and he puffed and he huffed and he puffed and he huffed and he puffed, and he blew the house down. And the little pig with its curly tail ran and came to the house that was made out of sticks, and just got inside in time. The big bad wolf was very angry, and he rat-a-tat-tatted at the door and said, little pigs, let me come in." And the 2 pigs said, "No, no, no, we won't let you in, not by the hairs on our chinny chin chin. In that case I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down." And he took a big deep breath, and he huffed and he puffed and he huffed and he puffed, and he blew the house down. And the two pigs ran away with the curly tails behind them and just got into the house that was made out of bricks in time. And the big bad wolf was very angry, but he pretended not to be. And he rat-a-tat-tatted on the door. And now there were 3 little pigs inside, and he said, little pigs, let me come in. And the 3 pigs said, no, 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 we won't let you in, not by the hairs on our chinny chin chin. In that case I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down. I don't think you can, said the 3rd little pig, for my house is very strong. But the big bad wolf took a big deep breath. And he huffed and he puffed 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 and he couldn't blow the house down. And the 3 little pigs danced all around, and then they heard a scritch, scratch, scritch, scratch, scritch. And they knew it was the big bad wolf climbing up the wall. And the 3rd little pig lit a fire in the hearth. They heard a scratch, scritch, scritch, scratch, scritch, scratch, scritch. And it was the big bad wolf on the roof. And they made a big pot of water on top of that fire. And the big bad wolf started to climb down the chimney, and his tail went into the water, and he screamed, "Ah!" But he tucked his tail inside of his belt, and his toe went into the water, and he screamed, "Ah!" And as he tried to scramble and climb out of that place, he slipped and fell into the pot. They put the lid on top, and that night they had wolf soup for supper. And that was the end of the big bad wolf. And I hope that the 3 little pigs lived happily ever after.